She called it artisanal paranoia. 5 minutes after a toddler nearly slipped through the open pool gate and into 6 feet of chlorinated regret, I stood there still holding the clipboard that had screamed the exact risk the day before. Linda Beaumont, president of Pinecrest Estates, HOA pastel cardigan perfectly draped like a uniform of fake neighborly love, smirked at me like I'd suggested we all wear tutus to the next block party. "Kill the lock requirement," she said, flicking her manicured hand like she was swatting a mosquito. No acknowledgement. No. Thanks for flagging that before little Timmy became a statistic. Just that smug little flick and a condescending. It's slowing down operations. We need agility, not anxiety. I stared at her across the folding table in the community clubhouse, the same table where she'd once find Mrs. Alvarez $150 for a flagpole 1 inch too tall. Linda was VP of nothing but gossip and control, zero actual experience in code compliance. But God forbid she missed her monthly President's Appreciation plaque because a child safety gate needed recalibrating. The woman actually laughed, said my clipboard was a prop, told me to embrace modern HOA culture, which apparently meant trusting duct tape smiles and community spirit could replace actual fences and real protocols. I didn't argue. You don't argue with someone who thinks county code is a rumor and near drowning is just a morale booster for the Facebook group. I just nodded, turned on my heel, and walked back to my townhouse with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing you've already got a fuse lit and the matches in your pocket. Now, I'm not a hero. I'm Sarah Mitchell, the elected compliance officer who's seen more near misses in this peaceful gated community than actual neighborly barbecues in the last 3 years. I speak fluent pool chemistry, sarcasm, and Article 7.2c of the CC and RS. My job isn't to win popularity contests. It's to make damn sure the kids under these roofs go home with the same number of limbs and breaths they had when they left the house. And apparently that made me a threat. I opened my folder, slid in a freshly printed 1-page summary labeled Stop Work Triggers, Revision G, bolded and brutal. Top bullet, gate defeat equals immediate lockout and notify custodian. Then I scanned her kill the lock note, the one she'd scribbled like she was canceling a Pilates class instead of overriding life-critical barriers, and BCC'd legal archive. Subject line, policy deviation, custodian signature not provided. It sat there in my secure folder like a landmine with a timer. That's the thing about paper. It doesn't yell. It doesn't stomp its feet like Linda does when someone parks in the wrong shade of gray. It just waits. You'd be amazed how many people listen to stories like this without ever subscribing. If you're one of the 97% just passing through, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It takes a second, and it really keeps the wheels of justice turning behind the scenes. Back in the neighborhood, you could already feel it happening. First, the gate lock got misplaced for the 4th of July fireworks viewing. Then someone started shortcutting the chemical logs. New barrel of pool shock, no SDS sheet, smells like industrial regret, and total denial. The fence panel on the deep end was zip-tied open just to let the party flow. And every time I flagged it, Linda scribbled noise or overreaction in the margins, like I was filing complaints about the weather and not imminent lawsuits. The irony? They kept asking me to sign off on changes, not because they valued my judgment, but because they needed my signature for the appearance of compliance. I refused every time. I quoted the CC and RS to their Botoxed faces. No deviation in critical safety controls without custodian approval. They rolled their eyes, muttered about bureaucracy, and did it anyway. But I kept the receipts. Every blank spot on the maintenance roster. Every security cam screenshot showing Linda herself unlocking the gate after hours. Every violation ticket closed without verification. I didn't raise hell. I just documented the storm because I knew. I knew what was coming. And when the gate finally swung wide at the wrong moment, no one would be able to say they weren't warned. And that 1-page sheet, it wasn't just a summary. It was a prophecy. It happened on a Saturday. Because of course it did. Saturdays are where HOA disasters go to pregame with mimosas. I was doing a walkthrough near the pool when I saw it. Gate swung wide open, zip ties still hanging like a noose, the deep-end fence panel propped with a pool noodle, and the water sparkling like it knew it wasn't supposed to be this accessible. And standing 2 feet from the edge, pale as printer paper, was little Caleb, 7 years old, new to the neighborhood, couldn't swim without floaties if his life depended on it. Poor kid had both arms out like he was stuck in a hostage video. Too afraid to move. Too innocent to know if this was normal or a goddamn death trap. Don't move. I barked and crossed that deck faster than any of them had ever seen me move. I hit the emergency gate latch with the palm of my hand hard enough to bruise, then turned and yanked the zip tie off like I was pulling teeth. Caleb looked at me like I just saved him from shark. Maybe I had. Who the hell disabled this gate? I asked loud enough for the whole barbecue crowd to hear. Someone mumbled something about needing to keep the party pace. Pace. That's the word they use right before someone loses a child, and Linda calls it an unfortunate learning opportunity. I wrote the incident up, took time-stamped photos, noted the name of the board member who'd walked past it 20 minutes earlier, and dropped it in Linda's inbox with a bolded header. Critical gate defeat. Immediate investigation required. Next morning, my report came back from her office, which was really her kitchen island, with a lipstick mark and one word in red sharp in the margin. Noise. Noise. Not hazard. Not fix this. Just noise. Like I've been whining about the sprinklers being too loud instead of watching a kid almost turn into a statistic. I wanted to scream. But screaming gets dismissed as hysteria when you're the woman in the high-vis vest who doesn't laugh at that time we almost let the kids drown stories at the annual meeting. So instead, I opened my pocket notebook. Second page, top line, highlighted in yellow since the day I got the role. Changes to safety controls require custodian sign-off. Not optional. Not unless Linda is in a hurry. Required. Full stop. And yet there it was. Another control bypassed. Another report ignored. Another near miss. They treat it like a joke until it stops being funny. The worst part wasn't even the danger. It was knowing that my title, Custodian of Compliance Protocols, meant jack if they could bypass me and write noise over the wreckage. That CCNR clause was supposed to be my shield. But without enforcement, it was a sticky note on a dam. They didn't need my expertise. They needed my silence. And when they couldn't get that, they tried to bury it under party schedules, team spirit, and that nauseating word again, agility. But here's the thing about shortcuts. They breed in the dark. And I had already started flipping on the lights. This wasn't about a kid freezing up anymore. It was about me realizing just how brittle the whole system was. One more cracked gate, one more skipped inspection, one more ignored warning. And that pool wouldn't just swallow a child. It would swallow the entire community's reputation. And maybe, just maybe, that would finally be loud enough for them to hear. I stopped pretending they'd listen. That was the last illusion to go. You don't beg a flood to respect sandbags. You reinforce the dam and record the timestamp for when it cracks. So I spent that Friday night in my home office with the door locked, lights dimmed, the hum of the neighborhood AC masking the click of keys. The full compliance register, 3 years of entries, inspections, deviations, near misses, corrected hazards, and 2 actual insurance claims no one likes to talk about, got compressed, date-stamped, encrypted, and copied off the cloud onto a secure drive I slid into a bank deposit envelope. Then I archived it. Not deleted, not edited. Archived. It's amazing how many board members think deleting a spreadsheet makes a hazard go away. Like danger runs on Microsoft Office and can't survive outside Excel. Next, I printed the one-pager again, but this time in bold 14-point type, double-spaced. No jargon, no acronyms, just cold, brutal triggers. Padlock required if gate defeat detected. Immediate shutdown for untrained personnel near water. Notify custodian prior to any bypass. No wiggle room. No excuses. I emailed it to the HOA attorney records with the subject line, President override attached. Custodian refusal logged. Attached her handwritten kill the lock note. Circled it like it was a specimen in a biology class. I included the new one-pager and crucially stated at the bottom in plain language, I do not approve this deletion and have not signed any authorization to remove critical safety infrastructure. Paper doesn't shout. It doesn't get defensive. It just sits there waiting to be undeniable. I tucked that hard copy into my clipboard, slid it back up into the glove box of my car, and uploaded one more to a private folder with insurer access just in case someone got clever later. The next morning, I made my rounds like usual. Clipboard in hand, face unreadable, passed by the pool again, gate back in place now, but no lockout tag. Someone had wiped their fingerprints off it, but not their guilt. I took time-stamped photos, close-ups of the scuff marks on the bracket, the zip tie still hanging from the trash can nearby, the wear lines that said, "We've done this before." Then came the chemical roster. I pulled the latest one from the maintenance shed. For new barrels, all with blank cells under hazard clearance. And guess whose signature was at the bottom, certifying they were fully safe? MS. Artisanal Paranoia herself. Signed and dated. No initials, no proof. Maintenance log. Found one for a pool shock swap. Closed with no secondary check, no technician name, no lot number listed, just a green stamp that looked suspiciously copy-pasted. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't make a speech. I collected it all, documented it in my quiet little way, and logged every shred into my private folder under a name I knew they'd never click. Performance Review Prep 2023. Because here's the truth. I couldn't stop the train. That thing was moving too fast. Powered by hubris, ego, and quarterly event KPIs dressed up as urgency. But I could damn well lay the track that led to the brake handle. I could build a chain of custody so airtight that when it finally blew, and it would blow, every piece would snap right back to the hand that lit the match. And when that happened, no one would ask me why I didn't stop it. They'd ask how I knew. The smell hit me before I even reached the pump house. Sharp, synthetic, sweet enough to trigger a headache behind my right eye. One of the maintenance guys looked up and half-joked, "Smells like my wife's nail salon in here." The others laughed, but no one could tell me what chemical they'd actually swapped in. No change control request. No hazard review. No SDS sheet in the binder. Just a beat-up barrel labeled with a Sharpie and duct tape confidence. I didn't yell. I wrote it down. Barrel ID, timestamp, operator name, and the fact that they all said it came in yesterday. I guess no one wanted to admit who rolled it off the truck or who signed for it, which meant someone upstairs had pushed it through without telling me again. By the time I walked back through the playground zone, the guardrail on the swing set was fully removed, panel hanging open like a pulled rib cage, and a broom propped up in place of the sensor block, and the equipment was still swinging. No interlock, no slowdown, no tag. The night shift lead waved like it was no big deal. "Just trying to hit quota on the summer fun," he said. "We'll button it back up after this batch." After this batch. Always after, never before. And where was Linda through all this? Smiling in the clubhouse the next morning, mimosa in hand, bragging about how event attendance was up 17% since we streamlined safety clutter. She actually said that. Safety clutter. Like the only thing keeping someone's kid out of a chemical bath was a minor inconvenience. I clenched my jaw so tight I thought I'd crack a molar. Didn't say a word. Just nodded like I agreed and went back to my office. That's where I pulled the access logs. They say data doesn't lie, but it sure as hell tattles. There it was. 2:12 a.m. 2 nights earlier. Badge ID ending in 1139. Hers. Unlocked the enclosure on the deep end gate. 5 minutes after a zone bypass error triggered. Then nothing logged until sunrise. No maintenance ticket, no override request, no authorization. Just a president playing weekend engineer behind everyone's back. Probably thought she was saving the party schedule. What she really did was make herself legally radioactive. And still I waited. Because some lessons they don't learn from words. They only learn from impact. The clipboard guy at the gate didn't look like much. Slacks too short, tablet in hand, that quiet little badge that means county authority with the power to ruin your entire summer. Said he was doing a routine audit on community water features. Random selection, nothing personal. I smiled like it wasn't Christmas morning. He made it 3 steps onto the deck before the chemical scent hit him, raised one eyebrow, walked straight to the pump house, and tapped his screen twice. "This shock listed on your approved inventory?" I didn't answer. I just handed him the blank SDS page with unknown substitute scribbled in the margin. His nostrils flared slightly. He asked for the lockout procedures. Then he asked to approve the gate change. Silence. Then his eyes drifted to the open fence panel on the deep end. No tag, no lock. He didn't say a word, just reached into his vest, pulled out a red county padlock, and clicked it into place with the finality of a coffin lid. That sound, that metallic click, was my brake handle. And the sound that followed? Footsteps scrambling, shouting, panicked whispers from the board chat, because someone finally realized this wasn't just a routine visit. It was the reckoning I'd been building, one signature at a time. The moment the inspector touched that gate, time split clean down the middle. Before sarcasm, warnings, reports marked noise. After the metallic click of a red padlock snapping shut, sealing a multi-$1,000 summer event schedule like a crime scene. He didn't even look around. No dramatic speech, no finger pointing, just one look at the defeated fence, one glance at my silent face, and then the lock like it had always been waiting. The pump stuttered, then went still. You could feel the pulse of the community cut off like a heart monitor gone flat. Somewhere alarms were blinking. Not the loud ones, but the subtle ones. The ones that live in spreadsheets and event forecasts. Not 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Treasurer. $2,800 semi-daily burn. Is that real? I stared at the screen, tapped back 3 letters, yes. Then nothing. Just that one word suspended in digital silence, while the rest of the neighborhood scrambled like ants around a crushed hill. Upstairs in the clubhouse, they herded into the boardroom like chickens sensing a storm. I followed, clipboard in hand, boots still dusty from the deck. No makeup, no apologies. I walked straight to the table and placed my one-pager in the center like a playing card in a rigged game. The top line was in bold, padlock risk. If gate is defeated, immediate stop. There it was. The prophecy written, distributed, ignored. Linda picked it up like it might burn her fingers, held it between 2 fingers, stared at it like it had betrayed her. "Who signed off on this?" she asked, voice calm but brittle. I met her eyes. No one. Because I refused. Another silence. Linda fidgeted in her chair, trying to look engaged while quietly evaporating. I watched her. She didn't say a word. Not yet. But her guilt moved in waves across her face. I could already see her reaching for the nearest excuse like a woman, realizing the parachute wasn't packed. I waited. The inspector stepped into the room, uninvited, and took a chair without asking. That told them more than any memo ever could. "We have a willful violation," he said evenly. "Unauthorized gate modification, absent safety data, fence intentionally bypassed, maintenance records incomplete." He let the list hang. And he added without looking at Linda, "Override occurred after hours. Badge logs confirm." I didn't need to twist the knife. She was already bleeding. What no one said, because everyone already knew, was that this wasn't a compliance failure. This was survival. And not just for the kids down there dodging open gates and untested chemicals, for the entire HOA itself. One more infraction at this level, and we'd be facing county citations that make investor calls feel like eulogies. Linda leaned back like gravity had doubled. The kind of lean where the next thing down is either your pride or your presidency. I stood there, hand behind my back, calm as a coroner. This wasn't about winning. It was about being right too late. The only thing more painful than watching disaster unfold is knowing you warned them and knowing they thought your warning was a joke. They weren't laughing now, and neither was I. She cracked first. Of course she did. 30 minutes into the boardroom, being oxygen-starved by tension, Linda finally stood up like a woman about to give a toast at her own funeral. Sweating through her tailored cardigan, she gestured vaguely in my direction with both hands like I was the magician behind the curtain of disaster. "She buried us in forms," she said, voice climbing just a bit too high. We couldn't move. Every time we tried to implement changes, It was another checklist, another procedure, another goddamn signature request. She turned safety into a bottleneck. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. Instead, I reached into my folder, pulled out a stack exactly half an inch thick, and slid it across the table like a dealer dropping a straight flush. Sequence, I said. Not volume, sequence. On top, her handwritten kill the lock note. Red ink, date, her initials. Paper doesn't lie. It doesn't shout. It just waits for the right moment to surface. Under that, the access log showing her badge unlocked the deep end gate at 2:12 a.m. Timestamp down to the second. Beneath that, the maintenance sheet for the last cycle for empty cells next to new chemical barrels, all certified as complete in her handwriting. No initials from supervisors, no logs from the kiosk, just a signature over silence. The inspector didn't look at me. He didn't have to. His attention stayed squarely on Linda, like a searchlight locking onto a rat in the dark. Who is the named custodian of compliance protocols? The inspector asked. I stepped forward calmly and set a printed CC&R binder onto the table, flipped to page 7, highlighted in yellow. No deviation, modification, or bypass of critical safety systems shall occur without written sign-off from the custodian of compliance. Then I raised my hand. My name is on that line. He nodded once, a quiet recognition that the map of responsibility was now crystal clear. Linda tried to pivot. We were under pressure. Event attendants had to meet targets. And the inspector, cut her off. This isn't about pressure. This is about process. And your process appears to include forging compliance and overriding life safety systems. His voice didn't rise, but it landed like a mallet. He glanced at the binder. This falls under willful violation. That means maximum penalties, potential press involvement, possibly civil liability, depending on the parent testimonies. The room went still. The treasurer closed her laptop slowly, as if trying to vanish into the screen. Legal flipped a notepad shut without taking another note. The vice president pressed his fingers together and stared down the table like he just watched his re-election burst into flames. No one defended Linda. She'd overplayed. Thought her title would shield her. Thought I'd roll over. Thought paper trails only mattered if you bothered to read them. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need to speak anymore. The documents were doing all the talking now. And they had perfect memory. The board didn't even wait for lunch. Emergency motion. No warning. Just a message that said, upstairs now. When I walked in, they looked like a poker table full of people holding busted hands and realizing I'd been the dealer the whole damn game. The vice president gestured to the empty seat at the end like he suddenly remembered I existed. We need to get that pool back online, he said. No bluster left, just raw, dented urgency. I sat, placed my folder on the table, and opened it like I was unwrapping a manual to their own survival. You want the padlock off? I asked calm and precise. There are 3 steps, 2 signatures, no shortcuts. I didn't rush, didn't smirk, just let the words land. First, we restore the full compliance register, original format, no edits, full read-only access for county, audit, and insurer review. Second, custodial authority comes back formally. That means I sign every critical safety change. No signature, no change. I paused, waited to see who would twitch. No one did. Third, budget line for the corrective action. Not a proposal, not a pitch, a hard number. You pull gates again, you retrain, you swap chemicals, you follow protocol. No paperwork, no pool. They listened. Not like before. This time it was different. There was a weight in the room now, and it wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. Dead weight from choices they made and risks they hoped would stay hidden. And the treasurer asked, eyes narrowed like she already knew I wasn't done. And I said, tapping my folder, I wanted in writing that the custodian, me, is not subject to board termination or demotion decisions without full vote review. During audits or within 90 days after any critical stop, my authority is insulated. That means no retaliation, no restructuring, no quiet exits. Someone exhaled through their nose. It sounded like surrender. Then I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward them. One email, time-stamped 9:04 a.m. Subject: RE Policy Review Custodial Authority Requirement from our insurer. I read it aloud. Coverage of event interruption and liability limited unless critical systems are under active management by a named authorized custodian and a documented current compliance register exists. I lowered the phone. Let the sentence hang. That's when it hit them. This wasn't just internal damage control. This was insurance. This was neighbor confidence. This was survival written in premiums and policy language. I didn't ask for trust. I didn't need it. What I offered wasn't a favor. It was the map out of their own recklessness. They didn't nod. They didn't argue. They just started writing. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right after you stop bleeding and realize you're not dead, but someone else is going to pay the bill. The first signature was mine, not a surrender, an agreement with teeth. I pressed my pen to the dotted line, blue ink only, right under the board's new policy title: Custodial Independence and Non-Interference Protocol. Direct board access, full veto authority over stop work conditions, and a separate reporting line insulated from Linda's sudden whims. No more back-channel terminations, no more power games, just process, policy, and ink. Then came theirs. Each board member, one by one. No eye contact, no small talk. The vice president didn't hesitate. His signature looked tired. The treasurer added a second clause herself: mandatory recertification for all senior board members, starting with those responsible for recent events. We all knew what that meant. Linda wasn't there. She'd been reassigned to a newly minted role with no budget, no reports, and a suspiciously long-sounding title that read like a padded cell in HOA speak: Strategic Event Liaison, or some other euphemism for exile. They didn't fire her. They vacuum-sealed her somewhere far from anything sharp, wet, or flammable. I didn't celebrate. I want to work. Toolbox talks at every neighborhood meeting, every crew. I stood shoulder to shoulder with homeowners who had every right to hate my guts for slowing down their parties. I didn't care. I walked the decks, reinstalled every gate, logged every bolt, tagged every bypass with a fresh color-coded system I designed myself. Green for good, yellow for review, red for touch this, and I shut you down. And the inspector watched. He didn't say much, just hovered, clipboard in hand, nodding occasionally like he was checking off a list only he could see. At one point, he asked a junior board member what fail-safe interlock meant. The kid answered right. The inspector nodded again. That was a win. In my binder, I slipped in the final page, an addendum clause stamped and signed by legal, compliance, and insurance. Plain language. No room for interpretation. No termination or demotion of custodian during any ongoing audit or within 90 days following a critical stop may occur without documented insurer concurrence and board majority approval. They tried to gut me from a system. I became part of the system instead. It wasn't respect. Not yet. But it was structure. Accountability chain of custody with my name etched into every link. And for the first time in a long time, people started asking before assuming, requesting instead of shortcutting. I wasn't a roadblock anymore. I was a checkpoint. And still the padlock stayed on. One last signature, one final line to cross before the palms could hum again. The paper was ready. So was I. The boardroom was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint scrape of the vice president's thumb running along the edge of my one-pager. He held it like it was radioactive, 2 fingers barely touching the corners, as if it might explode from the weight of being right too early. His eyes moved down the bolded top line again. Padlock risk if gate is defeated. Immediate stop. Then he laughed once. No humor, no air, just that flat broken sound people make when they realize they've been driving with their high beams off toward a cliff. His eyes flicked to the seat across the table. Empty now, the nameplate for Linda's still there. No one had bothered to remove it yet. Maybe no one wanted to touch it. She called it clutter, the vice president muttered. Said slowed things down. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The pool was still down. The inspector's still waiting. the neighbors still standing by, and the treasurer still bleeding $2,800 every 24 hours of silence. I pulled out the final form, set it on the table, and uncapped my pen. Restart authorization. Custodian's signature required. I signed it slowly, deliberately, like turning a key in a lock I forged myself. Across the hall, through the window, we saw the inspector walk to the deep end gate. He knelt, confirmed the fence was back, sensors calibrated, tag visible. Then, with a nod toward the nearest camera, he pulled out a small key, turned the red county padlock, and removed it with a click that sounded more like a gavel than metal. The pump jolted. Then it hummed. Not like before. Faster, louder, reckless. No, this was different. It moved slow, steady, disciplined, like a thing that had seen death and chosen to walk differently. I gathered my papers. Didn't linger. But before I left, I pulled something from my bag, a small plastic frame, and walked it over to the mini fridge in my office. Inside it, Linda's original Kill the Lock memo. Crinkled, lipstick-stained, still carrying that casual malice written in Sharpie like she was canceling brunch. I pinned it under a magnet labeled Almost. Then I locked the drawer. Later that afternoon, I finalized 2 retainer contracts. One with our insurer, one with our 2 largest event vendors. Quiet arrangements. Simple clause. All community activities must comply with embedded custodial standards and audit framework as designed by S. Mitchell. No fanfare. No press release. Just quiet compliance that now travel with every gate and every barrel we opened. And somewhere in the distance, Linda's new liaison title probably tasted like defeat. But the pool was open again. The kids were safe. The paper had won. And that in Pinecrest Estates was the sweetest kind of justice.